Hi, so I'm Robin. I am an LA native. So I live in Los Angeles. I still live in Los Angeles. I've lived many places all over the world, but I am a hybrid of sorts. I've always been a singer. I got my first professional job when I was 16. So a singer and actress and a little bit of a dancer. And then also a casting director, and then just recently a professional tarot card reader and psychic. So I'm a lot of things. And if anyone out there has been an actress or performer, an artist in any way, you know, you're always like hustling. But during the pandemic, when Corona hit, everything I did was in entertainment, even voiceover, everything. And for about 3 months, just everything shut down. And I had a really famous astrologer friend of mine tell me it's finally time to come out of the closet as a witch. So here I am. I've started a completely other business, which is reading people and guiding people through my love of the tarot cards. And that's me.
So Robin, thank you so much for sitting down with me today for this conversation. I am so grateful for your time. I want to start off by asking you, what do you think people's first impression of you is?
Me, well, I always get I'm warm and I'm not from LA. So nobody ever thinks I'm from Los Angeles, which is interesting to me. But that I'm warm and friendly and that I always look familiar. Like I always seem familiar to people. So I actually think that's a good sign because it means that I'm open and I'm involved and I guess I do look like a variety of people at every stage of my life or whatever movie or TV show is popular at the time. You know, I resemble people. So yeah, that's what I usually get when people first meet me. Yeah.
Well, and I think that that's a testament, like you said, to your character, where if someone's finding you familiar, there's got to be a familiar quality in how you carry yourself that they're resonating with. Otherwise, if it wasn't someone that they resonated with, they probably wouldn't say, "Hey, are you by any chance this person?"
Exactly, right? So I always thought that it was like a good quality to have. So, but I get it a lot. Everybody's like, do I know you? I think I've met you before. Or I was like, oh no. So, I always thought it was a nice quality. Yeah.
Yeah, I would think that would be a good thing. You said in your answer to that question that nobody thinks you're from LA. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think sometimes LA, LA's changed a lot during COVID, but sometimes LA gets a bad rap for, I guess, people coming here trying to find themselves or trying to become something or be something else, running away from things. I think people do that to big cities like New York and LA. They move from their small communities and they want to like make it big in LA. So there's a certain energy, people always want something from you, and I never had that. Never had that because I'm from LA. I'm not trying to get to LA. I'm like from LA. And people that are natives of every big city have a completely different, interpretation of what that city is to them. For me, it's home. LA is home, but everybody's like, you're so nice. You should, I can't believe you're from LA. And I'm like, there are nice people in
I can relate to that though, in terms of being from a city that has a specific style associated with it. I'm from Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
Originally.
Yeah.
And so everyone's like, oh, you're from Las Vegas. I'm like, yes, people are actually from there.
You're like, I'm not a showgirl. I'm not a professional gambler. I was just from Las Vegas.
Yes.
You're like, but there is a sparkle in my eye.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, but I did love it. And it was totally different then than it is now. So let's not talk about the now. Let's talk about the fact that it was a normal city when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Normal as it could have ever been, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So let's go to some of the things that you talked about in your intro. Let's start with the first half and not the recent transition.
Okay.
How did you get into the industry? Was that always, you mentioned being from LA and that's always what you considered home. Did you feel that that was always what you were supposed to do being in LA, or did you really have a passion, or was there something pivotal for you that was like, I need to be in the industry?
Well, I never even, like when I was growing up, I never thought of like entertainment as like an industry. I was just like, I love to sing. That's all I could. And my grandfather tells me the story how we used to go. We went on this really long road trip to Yosemite. And it's like an 8-hour drive, 8-hour, 9-hour drive, whatever. And he says that I sang all the way, and I would think I was like 3. And then I don't know, I was into a lot of things when I was growing up. I was a swimmer, I was a singer. I did everything. I played the piano. I tried everything. And the only thing that stuck was singing. I just kept singing. I started singing I actually started tap dancing when I was 8. And then that led me to like a local children's theater group. And then from there, I around 10, 12, and I literally never stopped. I just kept on singing. I just wanted to learn I just wanted to just get better and better and better. And then, of course, my dream was to always be on Broadway. So I was like on the wrong coast for that. And then I ended up studying jazz and chamber choir, and I did all kinds of music. But my first love was always musical theater and a cappella music. So
really,
definitely a geek in that way. My first love was always musical theater, and talk about a hard path to make a living in. Super competitive. I mean, when I was growing up, it actually wasn't as competitive as it is now, because there was no YouTube when I was growing up. There was no Instagram. There was no social media. So you could not see who was doing triple turns in Nebraska. So you didn't have any frame of reference. All I had was, some CDs that I used to listen to of like Bernadette Peters or Patti LuPone. And those are like the people that I was like, I just want to be those people. But now, I mean, women and men, I mean, they are singing circles around each other. But yeah, that was my first love. Bernadette Peters was like, I just wanted to be her. I wanted to be her. So, and when I first moved to New York, I had to get a job at Starbucks. I was working on I think Columbus and 74th or something. And who comes around the corner is Bernadette Peters, and she's walking her dog, and she's about like this big. And just 2 nights before, I had seen Annie Get Your Gun, and it was one of her Tony nominated performances. And I was, of course, in the back standing room, because I used to wait in line for hours to get standing room tickets or student discount tickets for $25. That's how I'd see every show. I just go by myself and stand in the back or buy anything I could, do a ticket or whatever. So I just seen her, and I was so nervous. I was like, I have to say something. So I walked up to her. I was like a stalker. When you're walking up the street and a person's in front of you and you're like, should I? And then I was walking up and excuse me, Miss Peter. And she's like, yes. And she turns around, and her hair is it's slow motion for me. And I said, I just wanted to tell you, I saw you in your performance last night. I was like, you were really great. And that's it. That's all I could muster. And then there's no one on the street, because it's 6 a.m. So it's really early. And we just kept on walking, we're walking like this. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so bad. And I couldn't do I walk slower? Do I walk faster? Do I cross the street? Am I weird?
I'm glad that you made it to New York. So did you get your dream of being on Broadway?
I almost did. It didn't happen until almost 20 years later. Almost 20 years later. It was a couple years ago. I finally booked a really big show, and then Corona hit. So, but yeah, it was a long road for me. A lot of my friends were making it when they were 19, 20. I had a lot of friends on Broadway by the time they were 26, 27. And that's really kind of when you do it, because being on stage doing 8 performances a week, it's rough. It's like running a marathon. You got to be in shape, all kinds of shape, mentally, physically, everything, right? So it helps the younger you are. It just does. But I kept auditioning, and I I didn't stay in New York. I ended up booking a tour that took me to Aruba. So I lived in Aruba. Yeah, I know, crazy, right? So I lived in Aruba, and I sang at a hotel for a year or so. And then I came back, and I actually decided to go back to school, because what happened is I finished a couple years singing, and I was like, I'm going to go be a Broadway star. And I did that, and it was a lot harder than I thought. And then I booked this thing, and then I decided, I'm going to go and just finish out school because I really only had a year left anyway. And so that's what I did. And then from there, that brought me back to the West Coast, and I just stayed in the West Coast. And then throughout like the next 15 or so years, I was doing all kinds of things. So I was singing professionally, like doing some studio work and doing voiceover. I was also casting. So I had met this voice teacher maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, and he totally changed my life. And from there, I was like working all of the time. And it kind of started this like sequential thing where I just was feeling really good about myself. And that's really good about my talent, really good about my hard work. Like, I'm like, like I can step in there. And even if I don't get the job, it doesn't matter because it's like I was finally felt like in tune with like my instrument. And I think that's really important. Even as casting, I tell people that all the time. It doesn't matter like if you get the job or not. It just doesn't matter. It's like, do you go, are you proud of your auditions? Do you honor yourself? Are you happy with how you're evolving as a person? Are you happy with how you're evolving as an actor or an actress or an artist or whatever you want? Because that's what keeps you going. Getting the jobs is kind of like the icing on top. One of my dreams was to sing with the LA Phil. And I actually got that opportunity at the Disney Concert Hall. I'd been at the Disney Concert Hall a couple times, but never as like a soloist. Like, I mean, this was like big for me. And it was like a children's production, but I didn't care. I was singing with the LA Phil. Like, this is like the cream of the crop musicians. Like, no one beats these people, right? I was so nervous about it. But the day of the performance, they canceled it because of the COVID. But I did get to rehearse with them, which was amazing. And I got to just look at the first violinist. And, I got to sing even though it was like a rehearsal or a test, I got to sing at the Disney Concert Hall for a second.
You can definitely see in your eyes and in your smile, you get this glow when you talk about singing and the aspirations realized. And I think it's really, really neat.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome. It's so cool to watch people's passion come through. And I love that you've taken on the casting role because you have so much experience from what you've talked about. And I like the one thing that stuck out to me about that you said was that you tell people in casting, even if you don't get it, it's okay. So you're not only just like sitting there checking a box. No, not you. Yes, you. No, not you. Yes, you. Yeah. You're giving feedback, which is vital, which, it resonates in all things, I think, not just acting and auditioning.
That's why you just always have to prepare for anything. Like you said, for anything, prepare, do the best you can do. And if you feel like you can do better, or you feel like you can learn something else, then do it. Then do it, or don't do it. But like I said, with the singing, I was getting to a point where I was like, I didn't feel like I was growing, and I didn't feel like I was starting to feel like nervous, and I was like, oh, it's time to go back to the basics, to like my voice, to this. And that's when I found this teacher who like totally changed my life. Yeah. With the singing. Yeah.
Well, this all comes back to confidence, right? And believing in yourself. And I think that that's a really strong thing. When you believe in yourself and you have confidence, other people will naturally, I think, receive that and believe in you as well. Which then leads me to the other part of your intro when you talked about switching gears during COVID. So before we get into that, what is something that would surprise people to know about you?
I usually say, that I'm like a professional tarot card reader. They'd be like, what? What? Are you reading me? What are you doing?
Well, then let's talk about that. So what was it that had you flip the switch and, as you put it, become the witch?
Right. I've always been obsessed with psychics and fortune telling and the future. I think when I was about 13, my mom took me to my first tarot card reader. And then as I started, and my grandma was always into it, like she liked to read tea leaves, and she had like this deck of playing cards she used to. I was always like just fascinated by it, right? And it was like so magical to me. And how do you like predict someone's future, you know? And when I was 13, I had met this psychic woman. She was a medium, and she was incredible. And I became obsessed. It's like a drug addict, right? It's like a gambler, right? I was like, I wanted to know what was happening all the time. It's like I wasn't even trusting myself. I was like, after every audition, I'd call psychic, or after, I was like obsessed. Like and now in the industry, we call those people psychic junkies, because you can't make a decision by yourself. You have to like call like your psychic advisor, right? But anyway, so I'd always been into it. It doesn't matter. So I had a deck of my mom had actually given my sister a deck of tarot cards for like my sister's 16th birthday, and we're close in age. And so I actually took the deck of tarot cards and I learned it. I decided I was going to learn the cards because I needed to learn how to do it, so I wasn't going to go broke. Does that make sense? It's like I needed to learn how to read myself because I was going to go broke. So the way that I taught myself by the book, and there's like 78 cards or something like that. Different decks have different numbers or whatever, but so I taught myself the meanings, and then I was, doing the thing or whatever. And then when I decided to go back to college, I had met this reader in Claremont, where I was raised. I was raised in Claremont, LA, and I met her at a local psychic store. And she read me with her tarot cards, and man, she was so good. I was like, how do you do that? Like, and she said, I meditate. She said, I meditated on each card. So you know the meanings, that's not enough. Throw out the meaning of the cards, sit with your deck, go get a deck that you like the pictures, that you think is pretty, whatever. You sit with your deck, you become friends with your deck, and you do it, right? So I did it. So that day I got my deck. I got a whole new deck that I loved, that was just fine. And there's all these rules that you can have about buying your own deck and all that stuff like that. I was like, whatever, I don't care. I'm going to do it my way. So then I took my cards and I did it. And I just started reading people, like just practicing. And I just got better. I got better at interpreting, or I got better at trusting my intuition. Because when you start to trust your intuition, it just starts going from there. Like then it becomes like an ability. Then you start to know what it feels like. You start to like guess what people are going to say, even guess what they're going to ask. Not even guess, I just know it now. I just like know what people are going to ask, right? But it took me like years and years. So during college, I started doing like college fairs. Like people would call me to like sit there and do college fairs. Would like one day I think I read for like 8 hours. It's like I just read and read and read and read and read and read and read. And then I don't really tell people that I did it because it is kind of weird, sometimes I'm like, oh, it's kind of weird. And it used to be more weird than it is now. Like I think it's more widely accepted to have like your astrologer or your psychic advisor. But at the time I was doing it, I felt weird about it. And so when I would get shows, if someone was having trouble or depressed, or, there's a lot of breakups in theater. And as they're growing up, like my friends would struggle with breakups. And so something fun to do is to do a tarot card reading, because it gives people validation for where they are in their life at that moment. So it makes the breakup easier. It makes the transition easier. So I was doing it for like all of my friends, like in every show I would be in, I would be like the resident psychic advisor for the show. And then like one time, and then so fast forward, so I was reading a lot, like just for friends, just whatever. And then I'd gotten just doing it all the time. And then once people find out you're doing it, then they're like coming to you, and like things start happening. Then they're coming to you, right? And everybody's like, you need to do this for money, for money, for money. It's like, some of my good friends are like really amazing psychics, amazing, and I always felt like I'm not that amazing. Like I always am like, I'm still learning, I'm still growing. Like that's not my first thing was always singing, right? So singing, I could be like, yeah, I can hold my own, right? The spiritual world and that world is still kind of new to me, not really, but the what I've been realizing is that it's a very individual thing. You know, you get a reading from me, you get a reading from me, you get a reading from your neighbor, you get a reading from your neighbor. They're very different things here. So when COVID hit, I had a friend who's a famous astrologer, and she was like, "It's time for you." She's like, "I have a message." I was like, "Okay." She's like, "It's time for you to come out of the witch closet, and because you need to help people, you can help people with this. You can help people during this time, and it's not just predicting your future; it's helping people with their lives." And I was like, "Okay." She's like, "You know, get your act together, get your website up, and like, let's start doing it." So she gave me a shout out, and I literally got like 50 people in like 3 weeks. I was like, oh my God. So I got so nervous because I just got so nervous. So a good friend of mine, she teaches classes, like development classes. And I called her up and I was like, I need help. Like, I'm scared. She's like, no, you can do this. And so I started mentoring with her. And she's an amazing psychic and medium. Like, she is just incredible. She'll be like, your father's name was Robert, right? And she's like incredible. So beginning of March, when the pandemic started, I've been with her ever since. I've been mentoring with her ever since. I sit in development circles and psychic circles, and I did a couple readings today before I talked to you. And I mean, it's pretty amazing because over the past year, like, the skill has grown a lot, and I've met so many amazing people, and my predictions are happening, which I love because I'm helping people. And it's just really great. I've just met so many people doing this because now I'm doing it over Zoom. So I'm read like all over the world. Like, it's really quite incredible, you know? But I think
a nice avenue to connect because you're really connecting, like you said, spiritually.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes people wonder about the tarot card readings and all of that. And is it just quote unquote cards and fun and games, right? Or but it's nice to see that you value the people and the craft. That you're putting in the work to continue to enhance your skills and make it better for not only for yourself, but for the person who you're reading. And I admire that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, I think it's wonderful that you have this amazing like transformation, and that, you know, COVID while it may have locked us all in, it's really let you out.
Yes, my witchy part out.
Yes. Yes. And I think that's great. And I hope that that will continue for you even as the theater comes back, and you can continue to do both. You can read your clients and you can read your stage partners. And I hope that that all continues for you.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, for sure it will, you know? So yeah, I mean, I couldn't give up. Like, the cards are like Robin and her cards. Do you know what I mean? It's like when people invite me places, they're like, "Are you bringing the cards?" You know what I mean? So it's kind of become like part of me now.
It's almost like we didn't really invite you, Robin. We invited the cards.
We invited the cards. We want to see the cards. And so I've had these cards for like years now. And so they're like all beat up. And so people are like, oh my God, your cards.
Again, I know I said this at the beginning, but I'm so grateful for your time and for your willingness to open up and share your story and even some of your vulnerabilities. And I love that. Before we close out with the final question that I like to ask, is there anything you feel that we might have missed?
I mean, they ask you what you do, and I'm like, what do I say for this? Like, do I say I'm a singer? Do I say I'm a casting director? Do I say I'm a tarot card reader? Because then it's like, you got to know your audience. Do you know what I mean? Like, know your audience. So it's nice to be able to talk about all three and know that, yeah, I'm all three. I do all three of it. All three of them.
And you are, and they all make up who you are, and they are you as a whole. And I like that because then you don't have to segment off and pick and choose. Yeah. You own your story and you own the things you enjoy.
Yeah.
So, well, with that said, as you read your tarot cards around the world via Zoom, or you get back into the theater, or back just out and about on a daily in LA, If you have the opportunity to hold up a sign as people pass you by and you could say one thing about you on the sign, what would you want them to know?
Basically, I'm a mirror for you. So I'm a validation of you. So it doesn't matter who you talk to.